Okay, well, pardon the sound of the stupid birds scratching around on the roof. I thought I'd do a quick video on what it is that I do with my leather NATO straps when I get them, because as you already know, I always cut the useless keeper off. And when you've got a nylon strap like this, it doesn't really make a big difference. But anyway, it makes a much bigger difference, and the other part of what I do makes a big difference with leather. Now, I use this little tool here, which is for my dremel, and it's basically just a sandpaper cylinder, and I can run that on the band on the underside. Now I'll show you on this watch, which I've just done yesterday. This watch I've done some time ago, but let's first of all just take the strap off and have a look at what's actually there when you've got the watch off to one side. So, oh, by the way, it's also really helpful to use these toolless spring bars, because that means that it's very easy to then take off. You can probably just see the little bolt action thingy there that allows you to take it off. If you ever want to put a different sort of strap on the back of the watch, then great, you can just do it. You know, you've got a two-piece strap that you really like, and you can just pop these out, pop the other one on. But mostly I just change between the various NATOs that I've got, well, ex-NATOs, just plain straps I like to call them. So you can see here how much formation there is caused by the watch actually, the strap actually fitting through where the spring bars are and then coming underneath the watch. Now you'll notice that the underneath of my watch is particularly clean, and having a single piece strap like this really helps, because it's then got that piece of strap underneath you between the watch and your skin to keep some of the gunk off. Okay, so let's take these guys out of the way and let's have a look at what I've done with this guy. Now, you can see here that the leather is actually quite thick. So if you had two thicknesses of that underneath your watch, two things would occur. One would be that the watch would then stick up essentially that much over your wrist, which is non-trivial when it's a small watch like this. It's strange that I call this a small watch. Anyway, so let's take this guy off, and sorry about the angle. And you can see that even though it's only been on a day, it's already started to form very nicely to the watch. Now, basically what I do, and in fact there's still chunks of leather on this, is I have a piece of wood, and you can see, well, it was a bit easier when this was not formed, but it's still fairly soft. But you can see pretty easily where I've gone over with the Dremel, and you know, I've basically worked on at least two things, maybe three. One is I thin the area where I know the spring bar is going to bend, because that thicker leather won't easily bend over, whereas now that I've thinned it out, that will actually bend over much more nicely, and then the strap won't pop out. So if I just thread this back in and only thread it a portion of the way with a single pass strap, you're always going to get the watch kind of bowing up over the top here. You know, you can push it down a bit, but it will always have that gap. Now by giving it a bit of a hit with the Dremel, you can see that it now fits much more nicely on the watch, and now it will actually sit quite pleasantly on your wrist, with that often coming with a little bit of pressure, so that the strap here meets and fits with the curve of the lug. So it's worthwhile doing it for those reasons. Now, to actually do the work, it's interesting how much of this thickness of the leather here is actually just pith, right? The actual strength is in the outside tegumen of the leather. I don't know if that's a leather working term, but it's certainly a biology term. And so by using this in the dremel, one of these guys, you can get it turning. Don't use it on a high RPM. I usually use mine at around about, what's that showing, 2. So just barely turning. Well, not barely turning, but there comes a point where you speed them down that they start to stop. And then you can just start where you want, and you can just move up the watch. Now, you need to do this in an open area, because basically you're going to have a lot of fluff come off. Keep an eye on it, and you can just see what's happening to the leather. Okay, so a zoom in here, and here we can see the texture of the surface of the leather. Let's see if I can get some better light on it for you to see. But you can also see how much I've thinned it compared to this other part here. I've taken it down to, you know, about 1 millimeter in diameter. So that doesn't really change the strength of the leather. As I said, the leather is still, you know, most of the strength is in this top part here. So doing that, and you can maybe make it a little bit thinner on these points, but I pretty much have it the same thickness all the way across, and you just do a couple of runs up and down it. You don't need a lot of pressure on your Dremel to just basically get the feel of how thick it is, and, you know, pause and then have another go at it. And I also like to give this a little bit of a touch up here where I've, you know, cut that. So let me just thread this in and show you again what it looks like. Now, I've done a blog post which I'll also link to in this, where I talk about why I thread my watch with the buckle down. And one of the reasons is that I can actually then put the watch on so that as I bend this around, this part sits on the side of my wrist and the buckle actually doesn't drag on the ground when I'm using a computer, which I do a fair bit. The whole watch now sits much more nicely than it did before, and generally speaking, it's made it a lot more comfortable. A strap like this was only, what, 17 Australian dollars, so it's cheap. And it means that basically I can start with a watch and I can go, okay, now I'm going to go and do some yard work, so I'm going to thread this guy in and then put it on, go out and do some work in the yard, and then after I finish sweating, I can take it off, and then I can put this other leather one on. And then I can go and do something slightly more dress casual. I don't know which one I wear most. Probably, I think I wear the leather one more. But certainly if I'm doing any woodworking or doing any, you know, things like construction, like this shed that we're in at the moment, then I tend to wear this one because I know I'm going to get pretty sweaty, and then I can always just take it off and wash it. And you might go, gee, that looks like it's new. And I go, well, yeah, that's because I wash it, right? And you can either just give it a bit of a scrub with a nail brush, a little bit of soap and water on it, and then hang it up to dry. I often hang it up by that. Or you can chuck it in the washing machine if you want. Either way, you know, whatever. They're just straps. And, in my opinion, this sort of strap is both comfortable and aesthetically pleasing. And if you have it more over this side, with the buckle closer to the base of the watch, then pretty much the watch can't hit the desk, or the buckle can't hit the desk when you're using a mouse. Pretend that's a mouse. It's just fabulous, and to be honest, it looks good from the other side because you haven't got that bloody great bow tie of all of the stuff hanging up. Oh, and of course you can actually trim it too.